I put you into a pattern to demonstrate how patterns and habitual ways of responding can become a self-imposed constraint, how that can limit creative thinking. Research Reinvented is all about challenging constraints, challenging ways of thinking. We did this in a matter of seconds, but often what happens is that these patterns develop over time. We're not even aware of it. So just to demonstrate that, just by way of analogy, fold your arms in front of you as you would normally. I have my left arm on top. Now, I want you to take your arms apart and weave them together so that the opposite forearm ends up on top the second time. Some folks are struggling with that. That's the same hands. They should go together. So the first time you folded your arms in front of you, how did that feel? Natural, right? Comfortable? Didn't have to think about it. But when I asked you to change and do something in a new way, how did that feel? Awkward. A little uncomfortable. You had to think about it. The analogy. Often we get into habitual ways of responding to situations and we're not even aware of it. So part of Research Reinvented, part of challenging these self-imposed constraints is to recognize what they are and to use our imagination from that formula earlier so that we don't simply repeat out of habit what we've done in the past. Classic definitions of creativity and innovation. When you look at the literature, our library at Buffalo State, we have some 4,000 books on the topic of creativity. In the field of creativity, there are 3 refereed journals, a journal called Creativity and Innovation Management, Creativity Research Journal, and the Journal of Creative Behavior. When you look across the field of creativity, the universal definition is the one that you see on the top of this slide. It's the production of original ideas that are made useful. It's original thinking that's applied in some way, that adds value, that addresses an issue, that resolves a challenge. Now, how does innovation connect to that? Innovation is the successful introduction of these new useful ideas. So we don't get to innovation unless we first engage in creative thinking. Borrowing from one of my friends at the Harvard Business School, Teresa Mabile, she says that creativity is the crucial front end of the innovation process. Before innovation can happen, the creative ideas must be generated by individuals and teams so that they can be successfully implemented. As I mentioned earlier, organizations aren't innovative or innovative unless the individuals in the organization are creative. Why are organizations so interested in innovation? This was a study done and published in the California Management Review. Looked at the relationship between innovation. 400-some organizations were tracked in terms of how innovative they were, and then they compared these organizations on 2 financial criteria, return on assets and market share, using the 400-some organizations and breaking them into fifths, using the bottom 20% in terms of innovation. When we compare the top 20% to the bottom 20%, we see that the top 20% in terms of market share outperformed the bottom 20% by 35%. In other words, they enjoyed 35% more market share and about 20% greater returns on assets. So there is good reason why so many organizations talk about innovation, and more this era is being called the innovation economy. So what can we do about deliberately provoking creative thinking? We can enhance our thinking process. So during this segment of the presentation, this will take us through the remainder of the presentation, I'm going to share with you from our work in Buffalo some proven techniques designed to enhance creative thinking. And working with Adrian, Gavin, and Sharon, I'll teach you a tool, and then we're going to try it out. In fact, you have 2 real Synovate tasks to work on. At the end of the presentation, we're going to collect those ideas, and they'll be transcribed and summarized. So anyone ever been in a meeting where you were there to solve a problem and the meeting didn't work? And anyone here ever been in an ineffective meeting? Oh, happens at Synovate too, huh? Well, there are lots of reasons why meetings are ineffective. You have a list here taken from a study done some years ago for what goes wrong in a meeting. Part of the reason why I'm sharing these creative problem-solving tools with you is to enhance group integration in groups when you need to come up with creative solutions. So the creative problem-solving process, a process that we can follow to avoid ineffective problem-solving meetings, goes something like this. There are three basic areas of operation: clarify, ideate, and develop. And within those areas of operation, there are specific stages of thinking that we go through. So for example, in clarify, we begin by identifying the goal, wish, or challenge. We move to gather data. We clarify what the root problems are. We then generate ideas. We select and strengthen solutions. So we take those ideas and we transform them into workable solutions. And then we look at what we need to do to successfully implement them. Now, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to focus on two stages: generate ideas and select and strengthen solutions. But I do want to tell a quick story about the importance of clarifying, because I don't want to skip over at least the value that clarifying has. Because if you don't, well, you all know in the research that you do, if you don't pose the right question, you can't get good answers. This is a crucial step in the creative problem-solving process. Jacob Getzels, who did a lot of research in the 70s around problem finding, the importance of good problem-finding skills, used to tell this story. There were a group of business people who had rented a car. They were driving in the hills. As they were driving along, they got a flat tire. Pull the car over to the side of the road. These business folks get out of the car. Cell phones don't work. It's an area where the cell phone isn't picking up its service. They go to the trunk. They open up the trunk. There's no jack. They define the problem as, how might we find a jack? One of the folks in the party said, well, you know, we passed a petrol station about 5 kilometers back. Let's hike back there and get what we need. So that's what they did. A few minutes later, another group of business people are driving along, same road. They get a flat as well. They pull off to the side of the road. They get out. Their cell phones don't work. They go to the trunk or the boot of their car. They open it up. No jack as well. They define their problem differently. They define their problem as, how might we raise the car? They look around, they see a barn. The other group didn't even notice the barn. They see a barn, and outside of the barn there's a pulley used to lift hay bales. Since they defined their problem as, how might we raise the car, guess what they did? They pushed the car over to the pulley, attached the pulley to the car. They lift up the car, change the tire, and along they go. So how we define our problem has tremendous impact on the solutions that we develop. So that's one of the crucial front-end areas, if you will, of the creative problem-solving process. There are tools and methods that we teach in that area. Today we're going to jump right to generating ideas. So as we do this, there are two important skills in every step of the process. These skill areas are called divergent thinking, which is represented by the top portion of the diamond, and convergent thinking, which is represented by the bottom portion of the diamond. So divergent thinking is generating many varied and original options. It's the search for many varied and original ideas. The bottom portion of the diamond, called convergent thinking, is the selection, screening, and development of the most promising options. Now, we all engage in these thinking skills. We all engage in divergent thinking. We all engage in convergent thinking, but often we do it in an ineffective way. The classic example of where divergent and convergent thinking are used in an ineffective way, where they're muddled together, is in meetings. I call them clay pigeon meetings. A meeting in which you're there to solve a problem, and whoever's managing the meeting looks around and says, right, does anyone have an idea? And someone shares an idea. In other words, they're thinking divergently. They share an idea. And then often the next comment to come out is what? No, that won't work. forget about it, or we tried that 80 years ago, it didn't work then, or maybe we tried it 2 years ago, it didn't work then. So what happens is while one person is trying to think divergently, someone else is converging. And what happens is people tend to withdraw, the idea production shuts down. One way to immediately make a meeting more effective or your own thinking immediately more effective is to separate these two forms of thinking. First, block out a time, an allotted amount of time, where you're focused on divergent thinking, building the menu of options, creating a list of options, and then when you're satisfied with the number of options you've generated, then switch to convergent thinking. What's the reason why we stretch to make lists of options? It's to get outside this area of familiarity. Our research shows that when you take a list of ideas and you evaluate them for their originality, when you divide them into 3 blocks, first third, second third, and the third third, where do we generally find the most original ideas? Where do you think? In the first third of the ideas produced, the second third, or the last third? What's your guess? Yeah, someone just said it. The last third. The first third is what you've already thought of. You've already thought of these things. It's the brain dump. It's when you get beyond that that you really get into new thinking. So here are 4 guidelines for how you encourage divergent thinking. By the way, I'm sharing these with you because you're going to do this. You're going to engage in divergent thinking in the area of generating ideas. So here are the 4 guidelines or rules I'd like you to follow, and you'll be doing this in teams at your tables, first on a fun problem and then on a Synovate problem. So, first principle when we're asked to think divergently is to suspend judgment. To temporarily set aside evaluation. Evaluation comes during the convergent phase. So we're not going to judge our own ideas and others' ideas during the divergent thinking phase. We're going to strive for quantity. Best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. We're going to allow for combinations where we'll build off of other people's thinking, use them to stimulate our own ideas. That capitalizes on integration. And then we're going to seek novel associations. So we're really going to allow ourselves to come up with blue sky, very imaginative ideas. Okay, we're going to practice this on something fun first, something that we can all relate to. We're going to pretend we're bathtub manufacturers. And our goal is to come up with a better bathtub. So the problem we're going to work on is how to improve the bathtub. We're going to come up with, I'm going to give you a benchmark. Our research shows that if a team is following the guidelines to divergent thinking effectively, you should be able to generate at least 5 ideas per minute. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to work on this, so I expect each table group to come up with at least 25 ideas. Now, we're going to need someone to record for you at your table, so let's make this quick. Look around at your table, identify the person who's wearing the most blue. Person with the most blue on? Okay, so this shouldn't take a lot of debate. Is that really blue? Well, no, I don't know. Person with the most blue on, look to your left and say, congratulations, you are the recorder. Another creativity lesson, don't leap to assumptions. Okay, so recorder, special message to the recorder. Recorder, of all the people in the group, I want you in particular to make sure that the group is adhering to these guidelines. No judging, you're striving for quantity. I've given you a quota to go for, at least 25 ideas. Make sure people are building off of each other and that really novel ideas are coming forward.